Welcome everyone. It is week number 2. We are into the term now. We are going to get started with more information, especially some chemistry. So let's see what we've got going on this week. First of all, we're going to review what you studied about last week, and that was the scientific method, which is an organized way that we go about doing science. And there are certain steps to it. It's a little more complex than just those simple steps that are outlined, and I explained that last week. Peer review is extremely important because it allows for validation of results. So it is extremely important. It keeps everyone honest, and it makes sure that the results that you saw are actually what is happening out there in the world. You also learned about what it means to be alive, by looking at a list of characteristics. And the importance of that is that you have to know whether something's alive or not in order to study it properly with science. Of course, there are lots of things that are not alive that we study with science. The whole field of astronomy is looking at planets and stars and bodies in outer space. But in biology, we need to know what is alive. And so we have a list of characteristics that we go by. And what you should realize from last week is that even non-living things exhibit some of those characteristics. But the important thing is that living things, or organisms as we call them, exhibit all of those characteristics. Okay, so what's going on for this next week? This next week, we're going to review some chemistry. Hopefully, you've had some chemistry in the past. And some people in biology say, well, why do I have to learn chemistry? Because this is a biology class. Because all of biology runs on chemistry. So it's really important to get just the basics of chemistry in order to understand biology. You're going to read 2 of the chapters in the textbook. They aren't that long, chapters 2 and 3, and pay particular attention to the water section, the carbon section, and then the 4 groups of organic molecules. So I'm going to say just a word about these. Water, the importance of water. If you've ever noticed when you listen to NASA, so NASA is the agency that explores outer space. If you notice when they are doing their searches in space and they're looking for life, the one thing they're looking for is the presence of water on planets or asteroids or wherever. Water. So water must be an extremely important component to life, and it is. In fact, without water, there is no life, and you can actually use that to your benefit if you want to prevent life from occurring. For example, if you don't want bacteria or fungi to destroy your food, you can dry it out. And you and I know that. You dry fruits, you dry meats, and that prevents the decomposition process. So water is extremely important to life. It's important because it's a polar molecule. It has slight charges on each end of the molecule. So on the oxygen end, there's a slight negative charge because oxygen is a bigger atom and it holds on to the electrons from the hydrogens a little bit longer than the hydrogens get to have them. So it's not shared custody of those electrons, if you will. And so there's a slight negative end on the oxygen end and a slight positive end on the 2 hydrogen ends. This makes the molecule polar, and it does several things. It makes this molecule really important because it is a polar molecule. It helps it stick to each other, so water molecules like to stick to each other, and it takes a lot of energy to force these water molecules apart. I think the most important property of life that water has is the fact that it can absorb so much heat in cells. Because you have all this chemistry going on in cells, there's a tremendous amount of heat that's produced. Just think of this like your car engine. Your car engine gets hot as it runs. Well, that's what happens in cells too. And something has to take away that heat, and that heat is absorbed by water. Water has some other very important properties too, but I think that's the most important property. All right, then you're going to learn about the carbon atom. The carbon atom is the basis of life. Organic molecules. So if you look at that word, organic refers to organisms, which are living things. Organic molecules are based on the atom carbon. The reason for this is because carbon can form 4 bonds in different directions with other atoms. And that means that you can make extremely complex structures based on carbon atoms. So that's the importance of carbon, but there's a whole section in the textbook on that. I believe that's in chapter 3. Then there are the 4 groups of organic molecules: carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. These are important. You have heard of these before. And the main reason that you've heard of them is because of your diet, because of the food that you take in. You know what carbs are, sugars and starches and those sorts of things. So you're going to read about carbohydrates, lipids, which are fats, oils, and waxes. They're extremely important because they are hydrophobic. They repel water. The proteins are an extremely important group of organic molecules because most of the proteins in cells are called enzymes, and enzymes do work. They carry out the biochemistry in cells. And then finally, the nucleic acids. Some of them are energy molecules, but of course, you know the molecule DNA. DNA, my favorite. Wait a minute, there it is, DNA. And DNA and RNA are used for the genetics or the heredity of traits in organisms. And then finally, you need to read that Module 2 overview because this gives you an idea of what you're covering in this section. It's just a few PowerPoint slides. It won't take you long. All right, then what do you have due? Well, you have some discussion board postings this week that have to do with those organic molecules and why they're important to life. So the organic molecules make up the food that you eat. All right, so we all know that we have to have food in order to survive. We also know that we need water. We can go longer without food than we can water, but we need both of them in order to survive. So your discussion board postings are all about why are organic molecules necessary in our food, and why is food and water necessary, and then if you could figure out some other component that you need in order to survive, factor X, what do you think that would be for all of life now? Food plus water plus this factor X, what do you think it would be, and give your reasoning for that. And then you're also going to take a look at a food label or a few food labels, and you're going to see what's listed there. Are there carbohydrates listed? Are there fats listed? Are there proteins listed? Are there nucleic acids listed? No on that last one. So the key to that is to look at what a nucleic acid molecule looks like. It's in the structure of the molecule that will help you answer that second part of the discussion board postings. So do take a look at that. What does a nucleic acid look like? What is the structure of a nucleic acid? And that will give you a clue. And then finally, you also have, no, not finally, you have more than this, but you also have a journal entry on the properties of carbon. I started out telling you about that, and the link between the burning of fossil fuels and carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And there's a good video on this, so make sure you watch that. And so you're going to have a nice discussion of these in your journal entry. Make sure to use references, make sure to acknowledge those references, and to show me in the paper where you have used those references. The next thing that you should do is watch the reliable sources video. And this is important because you're going to be doing some research for your final project. The first assignment is due in week 3 on your final project. So take a look at reliable sources video. Okay, here's a clue for you. Wikipedia, not reliable. Why is that? Because at this moment, someone can go in there and edit the article on DNA and put totally wrong information in there. So that's the reason, because because Wikipedia can be edited by anyone at any time, it is not a reliable source. You have to look at reliable sources. And that's not necessarily the first thing that pops up when you do a Google search either. I hate to tell you, but it's not. You know how it works because you do Google searches. Which one's the first one to pop up? The one that pays Google to pop up first. So, what is a reliable source? Especially when you're doing science. This is important. Use the Shapiro Library also. You have good resources there. So don't forget that. All right, and then last of all, for this week, you need to look at the final project topics. And they're listed under the guidelines and the rubrics. There's a whole list: population, ecology, pollution, eutrophication, etc., etc. There are quite a few topics that you can choose. You are going to choose one, and you are going to do a project on this. Now, one word that I want to say about this: you can choose your own. If you don't like any of the topics that are there, you can choose your own. But I have to approve that because it has to be a good topic and it has to be one that you're going to find information on. The other thing that I want to warn you about with these final projects, because this is a fairly big project and there's a lot of information that you're going to look up and explain. You don't want to narrow down your topic so small that you're not going to get or find enough information on it. Like if you're doing eutrophication, which is a change in a body of water where it eventually becomes unusable. So for example, a lake changes over time. Sediment and silt builds up on the bottom of the lake and eventually you don't have any water. Now, of course, this is over a long period of time, but it does happen. So what if you decide to do eutrophication of the pond in Farmer Joe's field, who lives next to you in Kansas? You're not going to find a lot on that when you do searches. So you need to keep it a broader topic than an extremely focused topic. Okay, but remember, if you're going to choose a different topic from one of the ones that's listed, you need to email me this week because next week you need to be working on this. Okay, I also wanted to give you a tip of the week. I have no idea why I just turned dark, but there I am. I want to give you a tip of the week every week if I can remember to do it. You're going to have assignments that are due every week. This week you've got discussion board postings. You've got the initial post that's due by Thursday and the 2 response posts due by Sunday. And then you have a journal entry, right? All right, it is very helpful to jot down a list of the things that you need to include in each of these assignments. And I do stuff like that all the time. Usually it's not on a little post-it note, but jot down a list of things to answer for each assignment. And you can say, well, why do I need to write it down? I have it right here in front of me. There are 2 reasons for this. One is that you're going to get an organized quick bullet of boom, 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 what you need to include in this particular post so that you don't have to go back and read that whole paper again. The other thing is that when you look at something, read it, process it in your brain, and write it down on a piece of paper, you have just synthesized some information, and so you're already starting to think about it. Note-taking is extremely important for everything. If you're at work and your boss says, okay, Janie, I need for you to do this and this and this and this and this. Do you think I'm just standing there listening to it? No, I've got a pencil and paper in my hand and I'm jotting down notes real quick. This and this and this and this so that I don't forget it. Also, it helps my brain start processing these tasks that I need to do so that I can get them done. So please do jot down a list of things to answer or things to do in each assignment. That will help you. And I am available all week, all during the week, at my email address, m.sigmon@snhu.edu. So please do contact me if you need anything. I will continue to hold office hours on Sunday evening from 6 to 7 Eastern Time. Please feel free to stop by during that time. If that time doesn't work for you, then let me know and I'll set up another time too. That's fine with me. So just let me know if you need anything, and I hope you have a wonderful week.